Hi everyone, welcome to my JDBC course. Now in this tutorial, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to JDBC. So let's have a look at an example. Let's say we have a computer and a Java application is running on it. Now most of the applications deal with data, and all this data is kept in some storage location which we usually call a database. So let's say we have a database over here which is just a storage area, right? It can be any database. It can be a MySQL database, it can be Oracle, or even SQL Server. Okay? And when I'm saying database, I'm particularly talking about an RDBMS, or a relational database management system. Now, in an RDBMS, data is stored in the form of tables, and these tables may be related to each other. Okay? So we have a Java application and we have a database. Now, most of the applications will have a login functionality. So let's say even our Java application has a login functionality. So we are having a login form over here, which is asking the user to enter the username and password. Now, in ideal scenarios, what happens is this Java application will first go to the database and it will fetch all the relevant information for that particular user. And then on the app side, it will make a comparison whether the data entered by the user and the data which is present in the database are matching. Okay, and based on that, it will decide whether to show a success page or an error page, right? So it somewhat works like this. But the problem over here is our database understands only one language, and that is SQL or SQL. So in this case, how will our Java application interact with the database? Okay, so we can't just directly send SQL queries from our Java application to the database, right? We need some agent in between. Okay, so this is where JDBC comes into picture. So what is this JDBC? JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity, and it is an API which allows our Java application to interact with an RDBMS. Okay, and when I'm saying API, I mean it will provide us a set of interfaces and classes which we are going to use in our Java applications to interact with the database, right? And secondly, it is independent of any particular database. So it's not that we will require a separate JDBC API for Oracle and a separate JDBC API for SQL Server. Okay, so the JDBC API will remain the same and we can use it with pretty much any RDBMS, right? So guys, this was a short introduction to JDBC. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching and see you in my next tutorial. Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this tutorial, we are going to see the different JDBC drivers. Now first of all, why do we need a database driver? Now, we can't directly talk to the database server. Okay, it won't understand our JDBC calls, right? So a database driver converts our JDBC calls to database specific calls. Okay, so for every database, we need a database driver, right? Let's say we want to connect to an Oracle database. Then we need an Oracle driver. Or if we want to connect to a MySQL database, then we need a MySQL driver, right? And so on. Now, there are 4 types of JDBC drivers, okay? First is type 1 driver, which is also called JDBC ODBC bridge driver. Then we have type 2 driver, which is called native API driver. Then we have type 3 driver, which is called network protocol driver. And finally, we have type 4 driver, which is also called as thin driver. Now, we'll see all these drivers one by one. So the first one is JDBC ODBC bridge driver. Okay. Now this JDBC ODBC bridge driver, it converts our JDBC calls to ODBC calls and gives it to the ODBC driver. Now the ODBC driver will in turn convert the calls to native calls of the database API. Okay. Now these native calls will be understood by the vendor database library. Okay. And the vendor database library will in turn convert the calls to vendor specific database protocol. Okay, so this is how it works. Now, if you see these layers over here till vendor database library, all of these layers are part of the client machine. Okay, now whenever our JDBC calls go from a client machine to the database, they will ultimately go in the form of data packets, right? So these calls have to be converted to some database specific protocol, right? and that job is done by our vendor database library. Okay, so the vendor database library takes the native calls which it gets from ODBC driver and it converts it to vendor specific database protocol. Okay, so this is how a JDBC ODBC bridge driver works. Now, this is the slowest of all the drivers, and that is because it has the maximum layers of communication. Okay, now the next driver is native API driver. Now this native API driver, it converts our JDBC calls to native calls of the database API. Okay, and these native calls will be understood by the vendor database library, and it will in turn convert those calls to a vendor specific database protocol. Okay, so this was the native API driver. Next we have the network protocol driver. Now the network protocol driver, it doesn't directly convert our JDBC calls. It uses a middleware between the calling program and the database. Okay, so this Java application is the calling program and this is our database. So the network protocol driver, it makes use of a middleware. Okay, and this middleware is basically any application server. Okay, so the middleware converts the JDBC calls to vendor specific database protocol. Okay, so this is how a network protocol driver works. Then finally we have the thin driver. So the thin driver, it converts the JDBC calls directly to vendor specific database protocol. Okay, so this is the fastest of all the drivers, and that is because it has the minimum number of layers of communication. Okay, so that's it guys. These were the 4 JDBC drivers. So thank you for watching and see you in my next tutorial. Hi everyone, welcome to my JDBC tutorial. Now in this tutorial, we'll just look at the different steps which are required for connecting to a database using JDBC. Now there are 5 main steps for connecting to a database using JDBC. So we'll just look at the different steps one by one. Step 1 is load and register the driver. So here we have this statement class.forName. Now forName is a method which takes one parameter, which is the class name of the database driver. Now since in this course we'll be using the Oracle database, so here I've passed the full class name of the Oracle database driver. Okay, so I'll just explain this one more time. Class over here is the name of a class which has a static method forName, and this static method takes one parameter which is the class name of the database driver. Okay, so this statement will load and register our database driver. Now step 2 is create connection. So here we'll be using the driver manager class which has a static method called as getConnection. Now this getConnection method returns a connection object which we will be capturing in a connection reference. Now this getConnection method, it takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is the connection URL, the next parameter is the username, and the last parameter is the password. So we'll just focus on the connection URL first. So this is the connection URL which is the first parameter, and as you can see it is divided into different parts. Now the first part, which is JDBC, this is the API. Oracle over here is the database. Thin is the type of database driver. So we've already seen that there are different types of JDBC drivers. Okay, so this is the type of JDBC driver. Then localhost is the server on which our Oracle database is running. 1521 is the port number, and finally XE is the name of the Oracle service. Okay, now the second parameter is system, which is the username. Okay, now the default username for Oracle database is system, right? And that is the reason why I've added system over here. And the last parameter is password. Okay, so this is the same password which you have entered while installing your Oracle. Okay, so this is how we create a connection. Now the next step is create statement. So here we'll be using the connection object for creating a statement. Okay, so this create statement method, it returns a statement object, and that we will capture in a statement reference, right? Now step 3 is execute query. Now we have different types of SQL statements, right? So we can have a DDL statement, which is data definition language. Then we can have a DML statement, which stands for data manipulation language. Okay. Now, for different types of SQL statements, we have different methods over here. Now, since the query which I have used over here is a select statement, the method for a select statement is execute query. Okay. And what this execute query method will do is it will return us a result set object. Okay. So a result set is simply data which is represented in the form of rows and columns. Okay. Now, if I had to use an insert or update statement over here, then I would have used execute update method. Okay. So for different types of SQL statements, we have different methods, right? So again, guys, this is just an example. We'll look at each of these methods in detail when we actually start off with the practical sessions, right? So this is just for explaining you the connectivity steps, right? So this was the step 4, which is execute query. And the last step is closing the connection. So this is the final step where we just close the connection. So these are the JDBC connectivity steps. So we'll just summarize them one more time. Step 1 is load and register the driver. Then we have create connection, then create statement, then execute query, and finally close connection. So guys, that's it for now. Thank you for watching and see you in my next tutorial. Hi everyone, welcome back. So in this tutorial, we are going to establish a connection with our Oracle database. Now we've already seen the connectivity steps before. So out of those 5 connectivity steps, we are going to implement the first 2 steps in this tutorial. Now before we begin with the actual coding, there are just a few things which I need to tell you. So I'm using the Eclipse IDE for coding, and inside that I've already created a project by the name JDBC. And inside that I've created a JDBC test class. Okay, so we are going to write all our code inside this JDBC test class. Okay, so let's start off. Now, the first thing which I'm going to do is just print a statement on the screen, okay, which is connecting to the database. So this will just mark the start of our application. Okay, now the first step is load and register the driver. So for that we have this statement class.forName, and inside that we pass the Oracle driver class name. Okay, so this is the class name of the Oracle driver, right? And we are getting some error over here, and it is asking us to handle this statement. So I'll just surround it with a try catch block. Okay, so I'm writing a try catch and the error is gone, right? Now, so this was the first step. Okay, so this will load and register the driver. Now, step 2 is creating a connection. So this is how we create a connection. We use the get connection method of the driver manager class, right? And we've already seen what these things are, but I'll still revise them one more time. So the get connection method, it takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is the connection URL. The second parameter is the username, and the last parameter is the password. So we'll just see the connection URL again. So over here, JDBC is the API, Oracle is the database, Thin is the type of JDBC driver, localhost is the server on which Oracle is running, 1521 is the port number, and XE is the name of the Oracle service. Then the second parameter is the username, which is system. So system is the default username for Oracle database. And finally, the last parameter is the password. And what I've done is I've kept the same name for the password, okay, as the username. Okay, but you can keep any password which you want. Okay, so while installing Oracle, just remember the password which you enter, right? And the same password you have to enter over here. Cool. So this is how we create a connection. And as you can see, we are getting some error over here, and that is because we have not imported these classes. So I'll just write one more statement, which is import java.sql.star. So this will just import all the JDBC related classes, right? And the error is gone. So after this, I'll just print one more statement, which is connection established, right? So if everything goes fine, then this statement should be displayed. Okay, so let's save and run the program. Now for running, we have a button over here. So I'll just click it. And as you can see, we are getting some error and it is saying class not found exception. So it is not able to find the Oracle driver class, and that is because we have not imported the Oracle driver. Okay, so before starting, we have to import the Oracle driver jar file, right? So for doing that, just right click on the project, go to properties, go to Java build path, then click on the libraries tab and then click add external jar. Okay, now I've already downloaded the jar, so I just have to import it. Okay, so this is the Oracle driver jar, right? So I'll just click on apply and OK. So let's try and run this one more time. And this time it should print connection established. And yes, as you can see, the connection with the database is established. So this jar file, you will find it on the official website. You can check it over here. Okay, so this was the version which I have downloaded. Right, so yes, guys, that's it for now. Thank you for watching and see you in my next tutorial. Hi everyone, welcome back. So in the previous tutorial, we saw how to establish a connection with our Oracle database. Now in this tutorial, we are going to read some data from the database and display it on the screen. Okay, so we are basically going to implement step number 3 to 5 in this tutorial. Okay, so before we start off with the actual coding, let me show you the database table which I have created. Right, so we'll have to start the Oracle client first. So just click on this. So as you can see, this is the Oracle client, and the first thing which we need to type in over here is connect. So this will ask you the username and password. And since in my case, both the username and password are system, I'll just enter the values. Okay. And yes, it's connected. So now I'll just fire a select query on the database table which I have created. Okay. So I'll say select star from student. So student is the name of the table. And yes, as you can see, there are 3 records in this table, right? Now what we are going to do is on the app side, we are going to read these values from the database and display it on the console. Okay, so I'll just close this now. Now, in this case, I've already implemented step number 1 and 2. So the next step is creating a statement. Okay, so I'll just create a statement object over here, and we create a statement object like this. Okay, so statement st is equal to con.create statement, right? Now, next we'll have to execute the query. Okay, so the step number 4 is executing the query. Okay, now since I'll be firing a select query over here, I'll require a result set object, right? So I'll create a result set object. Result set rs is equal to st.execute query, and inside that I'll pass my query. Now we've already seen this, depending on what type of query we are passing over here, we'll have to change the method, right? Now since I'm using a select query, for a select query we have to use an execute query method, right? If this was an insert or update query, then I had to use an execute update method, right? Yes. Now we'll have to iterate through this result set. We all know that a result set is simply a table of data. Okay, so this will return a tabular data, and that data will capture in a result set object. Okay, so we'll have to iterate through this table of data. But how do we do it? Now for iterating through this result set, I'll have to do something like this. While rs.next, and inside that I'll just print the values. Now what I have done over here, now a result set object, it maintains a cursor, and initially this cursor is positioned before the first row. Okay, now a result set object, it provides us a method called next. Now what this next method will do is, this method will move the cursor forward by 1 row from its current position. Okay, and it will return a boolean value. So if there is a record present in the result set, or if there is a row present in the result set, then it will move the cursor to that row and it will return true. But if there is no row present in the result set, then this method next, it will return false. And that's why we can use this method inside a while loop. So here what is happening is, first if it will check if there is a record present or if there is a row present in the result set. Okay, and if there is a row present, then this will return true, and as a result we will come inside the loop and print the values. Okay, and this will go on till the time it reaches the last row, and once the last row is reached, next time when it comes back here, it will return false because there is no row present in the result set. Okay, and we will come out of the loop. So this way we are going to print the values. Now for printing the values, just observe over here what I have done. So I've said rs.getInt. Now what is this? Now if you've seen the database table, you can remember that there were two columns. One was the ID and the second one was name. And ID over there was an integer value and name was a string value. So that's why what I've done is I've said rs.getInt, and inside that I've passed the column name. Okay, and for printing the name I've said rs.getString, and inside that I've passed the column name, right? So this will just print the values as it is from the database. So let's check if we are correct. So let's run this program. Okay, so I'm just saving it and running it. And yes, as you can see, we are displaying the correct values. So guys, this way we can read data from the database and display it on the screen. So by this, we are confirming that we are actually connected to the database, right? If you like my tutorials, do subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thank you for watching.